Hello and welcome to Realm's Edge Gaming. In this episode, I thought we could take a look at a bit of narrative fiction that was released alongside the Broken Realms series titled To Cast a Long Shadow. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, if you could do so, that would be absolutely amazing. And if you could consider dropping a like if you enjoyed the video too, that would be great as well. But let's get into the story. So, as you might know, Games Workshop have been releasing some fiction alongside each of the Broken Realm booklet releases. And we've actually covered some of the stories on this channel. For example, The Squint and I think in the Deep Dark Mountain. And they kind of sit along each book release to give a little bit of extra detail. And the one that they released recently, the most up-to-date one, was titled To Cast a Long Shadow. And to be honest with you, I think it's been my favourite one that they've done because it was to do with Malerion and Morathi. Both myself and there's another subscriber called Thomas Takes a Toll for the Dark. We've been really wanting to have Malerion appear in some kind of format, and he did, because it was a really interesting dialogue between the two of them, and we're going to take it into a little bit of detail and explore it. So as a bit of a brief summary of the story, Morathi's looking out of her window where she is in Anvilgard, which has now been titled or renamed Harkaron, as she's taken over the city, and she really doesn't like what she sees, or more to the point, smells. Because it's located in Akshi, there's a really sulphurous fumes that are coming off the kind of ocean, off the sea, and the city's in a state, and she thinks it's really ill-fitting of a goddess like her. And she's kind of bemoaning her situation. So she's walking along her room, and she's got this giant kind of high wall, which is kind of an alabaster white. And slowly her shadow starts to animate itself. And she doesn't think much of it because, with a kind of snake form and snake kind of hair, she's kind of used to seeing shadow moving and playing. But eventually it actually forms the shape of Malerion, who coldly congratulates her, given her, ascent to godhood. And the two of them have a dialogue together and discuss a number of topics. And it's the kind of first time that we've got this level of detail, because, he has appeared in the Broken Realms book as one of the dramatis personae, but hasn't really spoken or done much. So for him to kind of have a narrative focus like this, we kind of get to learn a bit more about his character, what he potentially looks like, and also, his kind of machinations and his relationship with Morathi too. Malerion actually insults Morathi by saying that even after attaining godhood, she still clings to mortal habits, and Morathi chops his finger off. They're interrupted by Salenti Lerzis, and Morathi throws a goblet at her and tells her that she's spending time with her son. Then Malerion says that he hears that humans are revolting, and Morathi says that she loves Malerion but has to go and kill the humans that seem to be leading a revolt. As a bit of a disclaimer, there will be some kind of spoilers in this. We will be talking about the other Broken Realms books, such as Morathi, Teclis and Be'lakor. So if you haven't read them, or you don't want to kind of know what happens, maybe revisit the video at a later stage. So the story is really cool and interesting because it does give us some kind of narrative description as to what Malerion looks like, and maybe gives us some clues as to what he might look like in the future if we were to receive a model of his. I know that on the Warhammer Weekly channel, they didn't think that we'd see a Malerion model for a while, but maybe this kind of portends that we might see it sooner than we think. It was interesting how they did the Be'lakor model, with him kind of being from a shadowy realm, the Prince of Shadow. And it may give us a clue as to how the stylization might be done for Malerion. But some of the descriptions they give of him are this. It says, only when the nest of snakes twisted into a great metallic crown, the shadow lengthening and becoming that of a slender, impossibly tall male with oil black eyes. So we know that the figure could possibly be rather tall with a great metallic crown, but we only see the kind of shadowy form, but it kind of interchanges and flickers. He kind of morphs himself into different things, whether he's illustrating a point, or to kind of, when he's showing, what he believes to something warlike, he changes into something else. It says, the sneer of the shade's mouth turned to an angry snarl, its eyes flaring into tongues of white fire. And then finally, the king shade shifted to become a thing of blades, purple fire burning at their tips. So maybe the model, has kind of two aspects, I guess in many ways, as, Morathi Kane does, how she has two models to represent it. It will be really interesting to see how, they go about painting such a model as well. I guess similar to Be'lakor, very monochromatic when you're talking about shadow. But it is interesting how we've got white fire and purple fire as well. So there is mentions of colours, even if they are kind of maybe reminiscence of the Druki, where we've got, Nagaroth Night, and that was a kind of purple colour too. So some ideas there maybe as to what Malerion looks like. If you haven't read the story, the narrative, I really do suggest that you have a look at it, because it is brilliantly written, and it's quite a funny read as well. Malerion is quite a funny character, particularly when he's saying about that humans are revolting. Morathi says that things are going to be changing in the realms. She says that things will be changing in Ulgu as well as Akshi. And then Malerion reminds Morathi that Sigmar will eventually find out about her plan. He says, how do you think the barbarian will react to your blatant coup? And it's interesting that Morathi and Malerion still refer to Sigmar as a barbarian and see him as very kind of unrefined in comparison with themselves. But Morathi isn't concerned, as she believes that Sigmar lacks kind of any allies, and that she, for some strange reason, kind of believes that they still have alliance together. She also thinks that Sigmar will be content that Nagash has been defeated by Teclis. And she also mentions something else, which, I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with. She mentions a Nadarite curse receding in regards to Sigmar, and how every city he builds, another will fall. I'm not familiar with Sigmar having kind of any curse on him. I did Google it as well, but didn't come up with anything. So, if you were able to kind of tell me anything about that, that would be brilliant if you could do so in the comments below. Malerion then says, with the Nehekaran's work undone, Sigmar's gaze will turn to you. And maybe this is what we'll see in the Kragnos book. Maybe we'll see, Sigmar actually going after Morathi, or at least, having dialogue with her in regards to what's happened, and the kind of future of the Pantheon, with Malerion and Morathi on it. They talk about Slaanesh as well. Malerion kind of chastises Morathi and says the Dark Prince thrashes against his chains, and his essence somehow bleeds free. The silhouette jabbed a finger at her, and a drop of pitch-black blood runs down the wall from its wounded hand. A direct result of your ambition. You risk the worst catastrophes purely to sate your own selfish desire. Well, we know in the Kragnos book for Broken Realms, we are going to be seeing Sinessa and Dexessa, the right and left hand of Slaanesh. We'll, I imagine, find out more about the Dark Prince too. But it was interesting how Malerion, wasn't impressed or happy with what Morathi had done. And as I said, kind of has a go at her for what events have occurred because of her. He seems a lot more, I guess, as befitting of someone from the realm of shadow. Someone a lot more kind of considerate, thinking about their plans, playing the long game, I guess, as opposed to Morathi. But then she kind of retaliates and said it's a means to an end. She got what she wanted. But it will be interesting to see how that kind of plays out, especially with the right and left hand, the kind of the newborn giving birth to, the twins, Sinessa and Dexessa. So that will be interesting in the Broken Realms Kragnos book. They also discuss Alarielle and her power. Morathi actually says, I fear he will have his hands full. This is when they're talking about what Sigmar will do. Morathi says that he will have his hands full if he seeks order now that dear Alarielle is making her play. Even in Ulgu you must feel the realms shiver with unease. Now, I kind of thought about the word shiver. It was similar to kind of quake. And I'm not sure whether Alarielle, this is kind of me just hypothesizing and maybe predicting and guessing what might happen. Perhaps Alarielle might have something to do with the release of Kragnos, but maybe not understanding his power. I know that we're going to get the War Song Revenant model, and it's going to have Alarielle's song. Maybe it's the song that might awaken Kragnos, perhaps, or maybe it might herald a Kanothi release later on. We know we're going to get Age of Sigmar 3.0. Maybe further on down the line, we will get some Kanothi. I did a video about Kragnos and who he was, and kind of wrongly predicted that he was a kind of Kanothi Sylvaneth tie-in model. But you never know, maybe further on down the line, it might kind of portend a release of them. If I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure what Alarielle's aim is going to be. I'd love to get your opinion on this kind of a bit further down below in the comments section. What do you think Alarielle's play is meant to be? I don't really know what her kind of end point would be. I know that she's, vehemently against chaos, and purging them would be definitely like a starting point for her. But I'm not really sure what she would want to attain kind of beyond that. So that's going to be really interesting. And as we said before, with the Kragnos book, hopefully that will kind of unveil like a little bit more about what that could be. And then finally, what is Malerion up to? Does he have an army? As Morathi and Malerion are talking, Malerion says, "But the twins have become emboldened by the victory of light over death, and the blind one tests my borders as we speak." So we know now that Tyrion is kind of trying to invade or kind of move into Ulgu territory. And I kind of like that idea because, with Tyrion being blind, we know that in Ulgu, people have kind of been beguiled and led astray with the kind of shadows and the kind of changing environment of Ulgu itself. And Tyrion wouldn't have that problem with being blind. So I really do like that kind of narrative path that they're going down. Malerion says that the Hessians are seekers, always probing, always shining light where it's not wanted. If the Lords of Illumination find a stable path through Cathartia before we are in full control, the shroud will soon tear, and our entire notion of supremacy will be at risk. So Cathartia is one of the Lumineth cities where they kind of get rid of the kind of used up ether quartz, and it's what the Cenari Cathalas do. So that's kind of really interesting. So we know that they kind of once they've used up that crystal that's going to give them all that magical power, that's where they put it, and it seems as though that has a kind of link to Ulgu and Malerion, it seems. It also says, "Not all in the shadow of the mage god resent the manner of our work." And in the story, Malerion kind of has a shadow image of a Lumineth kind of character, and he kind of makes it dance with his hand near to it. So it looks as though he does have allies in the Lumineth, and some of them seem to kind of maybe be going towards that darker, I know we've kind of used the word Umbraneth name before in reference to Malerion's army, but we're still not 100% certain on that. Maybe we will see some Umbraneth or Legion linked to Malerion in the next edition of Age of Sigmar. I don't think we'll see it maybe at the moment, or as one of the first kind of armies in 3rd edition. But it would be such a cool kind of box set to have a Tyrion kind of portion of a box set and a Malerion, and have a kind of light and dark battle to see what kind of happens in the realm of shadow with the Lumineth Realm Lords. I just think that would be kind of so cool, thematic, and definitely in keeping with the narrative so far. But I would love to get your opinion. If you've read the story, fantastic. I'd kind of like to get your opinion on what you thought of it. If you haven't, it is definitely worth a read. What do you think? What do you reckon we'll get? Do you reckon we will see a Malerion model kind of coming up soon? Or do you think we've got a while to wait? And do you reckon he's going to have his Umbraneth with him? Or would you reckon that was a Games Workshop? Because they actually kind of teased the name. But, it could be just Games Workshop drumming up a bit of hype there. Anyway, I can't wait to speak with you in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me. Really looking forward to talking with you all, and I'm sure we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.